Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Being raised there was always kind of like, I loved the city more than he did, which is interesting. And he had left for periods of time and then ended up kind of going back, luckily, because then that's when I met him. But and so he was like, okay, let's do it. And so we started to really look at kind of a map and be like, well, where do we want to go? And we landed on Denver because for what my husband does, there was seemed like good opportunities. There is a lovely theater community here that's, it doesn't consume you like in LA or New York, but there were opportunities. And it just had to me, Denver, like our first neighborhood where we lived, it was like, there was a little bit of DC, there was a little bit of New York, there was a little bit of Queens, there was a little bit of Columbus. Like it was just all the things that I think all the places I'd lived, it was sort of like there. And I still feel that way, even though we've moved out of Denver and now we're a little bit closer to Boulder. We're in a great little city called Lafayette, and it's very similar, just very chill, down to earth, good people. I know most of my neighbors. And it's just like there's enough going on without it being like, it's not Manhattan, right? But there's enough going on, but it's also a real sense of community. And people involved, and people care about, our town and stuff like that. And so I think, that becomes more important to you when you're thinking about kids, when you're thinking about like laying roots. It's not just about like, all the bells and whistles of like that New York offered. It was more about like, where can we kind of like build community in a less chaotic environment. So
Finding a more positive place to raise kids, right?
Yeah. And I have friends who were raising kids in New York and they love it and they can't. And for a while I really thought about it. And I think had my husband been like, yeah, I want to stay here, I think we'd probably still be doing it, honestly. Like I do. I was not closed to it. I think it was just one of those things where I was kind of like, he was sort of like, okay, well, if Jen wants to stay, we'll stay. But like, if she wants to go, like, let's, I'm out the door. And so, and I don't regret it, at all. I miss it. But I don't know if you've ever felt this way either, but sometimes we look back at things and we're like, oh, I really miss living in New York. But then I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I miss living in New York as much as I miss, the part of my life that went really fast, the part of my life where like, I love being a parent. I love my kids, zero regrets, but it's also very different now. I can't just like pack a bag and go away for a weekend or run down and see a show or grab drinks with my girlfriends like I used to be able to. And so sometimes it's like, I don't know if I miss the city. I miss the energy of the city. I don't know if I miss living there, but I do get very nostalgic for what life was like that you often take for granted, when you're in it. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You're the only person in our entire 15 months that we have been doing this podcast that I've interviewed that lives in Lafayette, Colorado. And I happen to be a huge fan of 70s on 7 on XM radio.
Okay.
And one of the hosts is Jonathan Jones, and he lives in Lafayette, Colorado. Do you happen to know him?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's funny. Now I'm going to have to look him up.
Well, shout out to Jonathan Jones. He's at Hi-Fi Jones on Instagram, at Hi-Fi Jones, HIFI Jones, on Instagram. I just recently signed up with Sirius XM Radio a couple of months ago, and I'm a big 70s classic rock guy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so
Mhm.
this channel 70s on 7, he's one of the DJs
Oh, that's so funny.
that's on a regular basis. So anyway, so shout out to Jonathan Jones in
Or
Lafayette.
I'm gonna look him up.
You're going to have to meet him, right?
Yeah, I know. I have to have
So that's
coffee.
an absolute must now. So you're in Lafayette.
Mhm.
You're raising your kids. You've been an entrepreneur. You've learned about marketing. You've learned about sales. You've learned about all that. At some point, you make a decision to create Renegade Motherhood.
Mhm.
Talk about that for a second. First of all, what is it? Well, by the
Yeah.
way, I know what it is, and I think it's really cool. So I can't wait for
Yeah.
you to talk about it. But also, how does it affect moms that are in business?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think earlier, New York was where I really first got my exposure to like professional networking organizations.
Mm,
And they're everywhere. There's lots of amazing groups. And then, Chamber of Commerce groups and leads groups and all that stuff. And so I was part of a BNI, it stands for Business Networking International, which
mhm,
many people are part of for many years in New York. And then when I moved to Denver, I immediately joined one in Denver because it's what I knew. And a lot of good things came out of that. I have a lot of respect for that organization. But when I had my first daughter 7.5 years ago, I was like, this 7 a.m. meeting
yeah.
once a week is it's just not going to work for me anymore. So I took a break from it, ended up starting when she was maybe 1 or 2, starting a different group for women in business in Denver. That was actually growing nicely. And then COVID hit,
Mhm,
and we didn't really have like a digital backup. And then everyone was so burned out on Zoom, we just didn't really pivot. In the meantime, in 2020, I had my second daughter, and coming out of that postpartum haze, pandemic haze, just some mental health stuff I struggled with too. My second time around, I really found myself like really wanting to get back in a room with people. Not I was really Zoom is amazing, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. But as someone whose roots are in live theater, it
mhm.
was not the same. And so
It's
I was,
not. The energy is just not there.
it's not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not. It's an amazing tool. I hope there will never be a time where it fully replaces like in-person interaction. Um, and I found myself being like, well, maybe I could like kind of try to revive the other group or something. But I really found myself wanting to connect with other moms, but in a business context. So
Yeah.
I posted in the local moms Facebook group, hey, any other moms in business around here? Want to have coffee? I used to run a networking group and kind of considering, starting a meetup, and like, got like 2 likes and like a comment or two. And I was like, okay, we'll see. But there was an amazing woman who owns a business around here. And she was like, well, I have the space, you could use our space, and put me in touch with another friend, and they had kind of led a different group, and so we ended up having this meetup. And originally it was kind of like Boulder County moms in business. We met once
Mhm.
a month, anywhere from like 12 to, like 16 to 20 people would come and everything. It was pretty casual. And then I found myself over the coming years, so just really, I had most of my business had been more in the health, nutrition, coaching space. And I was just finding myself really reflecting on like what I actually really enjoyed most about business. And it was connecting with people, it was
Mhm.
connecting other people, it was building communities, and it was talking about marketing and branding
Mhm.
and copywriting and visibility and public speaking. And that was the stuff that I was like, kind of this moment of like, what am I doing? Like, I'm like, I felt ready. And I don't think we talk about this enough in business, like that
Mhm.
it's okay to change. It's normal to change and evolve.
Mhm.
And just because maybe you had a lot of success in a certain type of business, you're still allowed to like pivot and do something else. Just like
Yeah.
people with jobs, people change companies, they change careers, they evolve, and it's no different, I think, in business. But there is some stigma, I think, around that sometimes. So yeah, I had some people who'd been going to the group for a long time, and they were sort of like, Jen, you really like, you're just so good at this, and like you could charge for this. So it was kind of a free thing. And so they kind of gave me the confidence to like attach a little bit of value to it.
Mhm.
And then I tell you, the minute that I did that, it just went to the next level.
Hmm.
Like it just, it's such an interesting thing, the energy of currency, um, and then I had a kind of another one of those moments of like, I woke up and was like, I'm ready to leave New York. It was another one of those like complete, like full body, like like, I'm ready to completely kind of just, to shift. I was kind of in these like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and really made the decision. And so that's when I rebranded, and started rolling out a digital community, started rolling out more events, started opening up some new locations. And all of that has been relatively recent, really, all within 2024. And even the first quarter of 2024, I still was kind of doing some other things. And so we do live networking events for moms in business. And right now we're in 3 locations in the Denver, Boulder area. And then we started a Phoenix location in October, and we have another one of those coming up in December. And then I started a digital community. It's been called the Mother Mind Collective. I think I'm actually changing the name to Renegade Motherhood All Access. So depending when you listen to this, if you go to the website, it might probably have a different name, but that we have an online community. We do online coaching, and like I call it mother minding, masterminding, and I bring in guest experts to talk about different topics as well. And it's been awesome. It's truly, I mean, it's one of those things where I think if someone is a business owner listening to this and is feeling kind of like question, like having this big idea that you're sitting on, and it's a good idea, but there's something holding you back. Like, I talk a lot about this idea of building the plane in the air. I think a lot of business owners, I think women in particularly, think that we have to have a whole plan in place before we can start. And I'm very big on like, take the next best step and then figure it out as you go. Because if we wait for all conditions to be right, if we wait for everything to be exactly as it's meant to be and have an entire strategic plan, we get so bogged down in details, we never actually do it. And so, I'm really grateful to the people that were kind of like nudging me a little bit, and just for getting a little uncomfortable and being like, okay, I'm just going to take the next step. And then it just really took off from there. So, yeah.
Kind of like the ready, fire, aim theory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you look back at some of the like amazing entrepreneurs, okay, there's a little company called Amazon that you may have heard of, right? And Jeff Bezos went to his wife, did a little bit of research, went to his wife and said, I want to start this online bookstore. And she's like, do it. Right. And she actually encouraged him
at first. No, that's
she actually encouraged him. She actually encouraged him to quit his job. He had this major executive position on Wall Street in New York. And they quit the job. And I don't know if you've seen it's Bezos, The Early Years.
No, I haven't.
It's on, I think, Netflix, but it's fascinating. So he goes to his wife. She says, well, let's quit our jobs. Let's sell our house and let's move to Silicon Valley. So they go to Dallas Fort Worth area on their way. They're driving out to California, and he visits his parents, and he tells his parents what he's doing. And his parents have $600,000 sitting in retirement. And he asks them if they want to invest. And he tells them, he says, listen, this could go bankrupt. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know if we're going to be successful. There's a significant chance that we're going to go bankrupt. And they invested with him all of their money. And it turned out to be the single most lucrative investment, venture capital investment of all time. Nobody's ever ended up anywhere near it.
I believe
and so there's something to be said for the ready, fire, aim idea, right? Yeah. He gets to Silicon Valley, they rent a house, he takes over the garage, and the rest, as they say, is history, right? But he ran Amazon for the first, I think, couple of years out of that garage.
Yeah, my office is above our garage, so
yeah,
I'm kind of
right. Right. You're in the carriage unit, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's something to be said if you look at truly successful, and I'm talking, entrepreneurs, right? If you look at truly successful entrepreneurs, there's something to be said for ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
So,
well, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote the book, Big Magic, as well. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And she, her whole premise is, if there's an idea and it's yours, like it'll only stick around for a little bit. And if you don't do something with it, somebody else is going to go, and I had read that book and I was still kind of like, and then it's just that moment of like, that proverbial kick in the ass kind of like, if not now, when, and so I'm glad I listen to my intuition is very strong, but it doesn't mean you always listen to it.
Yeah.
And in this case, I'm very glad because it's just been really exciting.
I am too, because that's how we met, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's something that we wanted to talk about that's a scoop for
Yeah.
our listeners, right?
Yeah.
Like you've heard it here first, so to speak, right? So talk about the project you're working on, and it's going to be available in a couple of months, you said, right?
Yeah. So, well, there's kind of two pieces to it. So, and I will say you've heard it here second because
Oh, second, sorry.
I announced this at my summit. I kind of used the summit that I hosted last week. So the 70 moms in business who came to that were really the first kind of people. But I've been developing this kind of main character persona quiz and kind of education sequence that's basically you can take a quiz and it's kind of an entrepreneurial personality test, but it's really designed through the lens of like, how should you build your stage? Because in this world now where everybody can have a platform, it's a beautiful thing, but it often means that it kind of breeds this self-doubt. And I know for me, for the last several years, I lost sight of like how to really trust my own instincts. And I think for moms especially, this can happen. I was building my business through in-person networking and public speaking and all this stuff. And then I had kids and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I have to do things a little bit differently. And this led to this whole identity crisis and like self-doubt crisis of like, I don't trust my own instincts anymore. And I just have to do it everyone else's way. And I think as entrepreneurs, we can fall into that trap pretty easily of like, well, this coach says to do it this way and this person says to do it that way and da, 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 da. And it doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about, but if you are building your business through somebody else's personalities and strengths, it could work for you for a little bit, but eventually it's going to start to be like, I don't even like what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah.
And, as an actor, people were always like, oh, you must do a ton with like reels and TikToks and everything. And I don't, because I don't love it. And I tried to do it for the longest time. And I just was like, this is not what I want 95% of my marketing efforts to be.
Yeah.
And so I developed this whole quiz and where you can go to the website, you can take the quiz, you get your result, and then also some strengths, some things to look out for, some ways to increase your visibility by doing it through, your main character persona. And then also who you should have in your network. Because I think as someone who loves networking, I also have seen a lot of kind of ugly sides of it where people approach it with a purely transactional approach. But, networking is also very strategic because sometimes the people in your network are not necessarily people who are like directly spending money on you, but they're giving you so much value in other ways. And so we need to have a diverse network of different types of these kind of main character personas. So it gives you some insight in that as well. And then that's parlaying into a new like small group offering that I'll be rolling out in early 2025, which is called Main Character Magic. And that is a blend of brand clarity, of messaging, of cultivating this main character persona and creating a visibility plan around it. And then actually bringing my acting background into it with the public speaking, the on-camera work, if that's something that you want to do. I'm really trying to make visibility fun again, because I think sometimes it feels like it's a chore, and it is kind of a thing that we do need to be visible, I think, to stand out. But if we're doing it in a way that feels really misaligned, you're not going to do it, or you're going to attract the wrong people.
Yeah, that's true.
So the first round of this, I am going to do, it's going to be hybrid, part of it online, but then part of it really in person. So we can actually do the public speaking, like in person, because ultimately that's, what you're going to be doing. And so that's something I have not actually really, apart from the people who are at the summit, I have not really talked about that to anybody else. So you are the first.
Well, the first in the podcast world anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
For sure.
That's cool.
So
we're going to wrap up, but I wanted you to do something for me.
Okay.
If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about starting a job, they're thinking about becoming a mompreneur, right? They're thinking about, they've got an idea, they're thinking about launching it, they don't know what to do, they're not sure what the next step is. What's your best piece of advice for them?
Two things. One, take the quiz. No, I always say you want to surround yourself with supportive community, with the caveat of when you're in a place of making change or bringing a new idea to the world, you also want to be really careful about who you share that with.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes the mistake that, especially like maybe a mom in business makes is like, oh, well, I've really, my kids are in school. Maybe it's someone who's been staying home. Well, my kids are at school now, and I really want to kind of get back to doing something for myself. But I don't know if I want to like do like, a job where I don't have time, control of my time. And so then they go to, their mom or mother-in-law or, a fellow kind of stay-at-home mom. And they're like, well, this is what I'm thinking. I think I want to start this business. And they're immediately like, why would you do that? Why not just go get a 20-hour a week part-time job, something reliable, something dependable? Because the people that you're talking to, their values might be very different than yours. Their values might be rooted in like security and knowing this. But they sorry, are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry about that. I
That's okay.
just got a big, like some sort of like mic input warning on, I don't know why now, but okay. And, we often get excitement around a new move in our life, whether it's moving to a new town, whether it's a new job or a new business. And then we go and share it with people, assuming that they understand what it is that we're trying to do. And then we get very like discouraged very easily. So you just want to make sure, like, if you're kind of like, ooh, I have this idea, like, who's someone in your world that is an entrepreneur who will probably understand how you're feeling, instead of maybe someone who loves you and wants you to be successful, but has a different idea of success. Because I hear so many times people, well, I had this great idea, and then I talked to my husband. and then, maybe not everybody is Jeff Bezos's wife.
Right.
He's like very understanding, right?
Right.
So I think that's something that's important to talk about, because we get excited about something and then we go and we blast it on social media, and then we're expecting to be validated. And so it's getting confident enough in what you're doing and knowing that even if someone tells you, oh, you're crazy to do that, you're like, well, like, okay, cool. Like, then I'm, you don't need to do it. You're not the one doing it. I'm the one doing it. I think that's an important thing to do. And then make sure that you take the time to really flesh out the vision, like what is the vision, and why are you doing it? Because this is talked about so much, but like, there's a lot of easier ways to make a living than being an entrepreneur.
Oh, sure.
So if you don't really know like why you're doing it and how you want to show up amidst the challenges, as soon as that first kind of thing hits, you're probably going to be out. So you have to have be rooted really strongly in what it is that you're trying to create and why you're creating it.
That's a really great point. And I want to real quick touch on this quiz. I've been teaching DISC for 32 years, which is the DISC, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens when you teach DISC is you learn a great deal about yourself. You learn a great deal about how you're wired and why you think the way you think, and what goes on in here, right? Which is a little bit of a mystery to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
It's very clarifying. And about 30 years ago, I was in front of a group of realtors and I was and lenders, and I was teaching them about DISC. And it dawned on me right in the middle of it, while I'm standing there talking to them, that I had never had this conversation with my wife about her DISC. Okay. So I went home that night and I said, hey, sit down. Let's talk for a minute. Right. And I explained to her that she's an SC. And I explained to her that her behavioral style is perfect for somebody like me, because an S wants to go slow. They want to contemplate. They want to think things through. They don't want to move too fast. They don't like change. Okay. And a C is somebody who's conforming. They're literally following every rule. They're all about telling people like me, you can't do it like that. Right. And so I said to her, I said, you're perfect for me. Your personality style is perfect for my personality style, right? And I explained it to her. She started crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, I never realized until right now how much you get me. Like how much you really understand what I bring to the, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was a big moment. It was a
Yeah.
big moment in our marriage. And we're going to be celebrating 31 years in January.
Congratulations.
So
Yeah.
amazing. Absolutely amazing. Listen, Jen, thank you so much for being our
Thank
guest on the
you.
Mike Litton Experience. This has been such a great time. It's been the fastest hour I've ever lived. But I've thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. And I'm
Likewise.
looking forward to having you back on.
Thank
So
you. Thank you. You're a
thank you
great
so
host.
much.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you are really exceptional what you do and the questions you ask. So I just want to reflect that back to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I receive it, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.